What's up, you guys? Ross Sapp, managing editor, FightfulMMA.com. We have UFC 234 coverage tonight, but it is not much of a pay-per-view. And that was before this fight even got canceled. What is this fight that got canceled? Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum, the prime draw for the locals in Australia. You had Robert Whittaker from New South Wales set to take on Kelvin Gastelum in this headline fight. Now, we're going to get into all this. The news was broken by that of Brett Okamoto of ESPN. Last night, Robert Whittaker complained of stomach pains. He's taken to the hospital. As it turns out, he has a hernia. He is out of tonight's fight. Kelvin Gastelum isn't going to be rebooked. Instead, Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya is the new main event of the show. Unbelievable. Not only that, this was a two-fight show. I'm sure that Ricky Simone and Ronnie Yaya is going to be a good fight. The long and short of it is nobody knows who they are. So when you book a show like this, and it is a two-fight show, it's really, really rough to sell this. They will be very fortunate to crack 100,000 buys at this point, unless Anderson Silva carries some sort of magic in which we just don't know about in 2019, and that's always a possibility. There are a lot of people who already bought this pay-per-view who no longer want the pay-per-view. How will that work out? Keep in mind, UFC just came to an emergency one-fight deal with DirecTV as a result of all this. So Robert Whittaker now out of his title fight. I had a lot of people saying, well, should they strip Robert Whittaker? Should they do this? I don't really think so. And why don't I think so? Well, it's early 2019. He defended the title last year. He defended it in June against Romero. He did get hurt last February, which is hopefully doesn't become much of a tradition. But he fights every single year. It's not like he takes a full year off or anything like that. We'll see how that goes. I would not be angry if they made this fight an interim title fight. This fight being Silva versus Adesanya. I haven't heard of what they're going to do. I think you have to do that. I think if you're doing them as a number one contender fight anyway, then Silva versus Adesanya should be an interim title fight. Give these fans something that is momentous, that is worthwhile, that is worth a shit, quite frankly. This is a horrible turn of events. Anybody who watches the Fightful MMA podcast every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, with Showdown Joe and James Lynch, knows that I am a big supporter of Robert Whittaker. I was a believer in Robert Whittaker. I thought that, honestly, from the time he lost to Stephen Thompson, that he was going to be a really good indication of what abandoning weight cutting could do. And this wasn't a weight cut issue or anything like that. But I remember when he beat Sapo and he beat Uriah Hall back-to-back. And I had the show with Showdown Joe, and we talked about him fighting Brunson. I was like, he's beating Brunson. Oh, and he's going to beat Jacare too. Oh, and I think he's going to beat Romero too. His performance, his first performance against Yoel Romero, the first one, is nothing short of like movie stuff, in my opinion. This was a show in which it was a stacked show. Keep in mind, UFC 213, where they had Nunes and Shevchenko. They had Lawler and Cowboy playing. They had Curtis Blades on this show. They had Verdum and Overeem. Like, all this stuff was supposed to happen on this show. Pettis was on there. And then, like, a bunch of it fell out. Nunes and Shevchenko fell out. Lawler and Cowboy fell out. And Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero was the main event. And Robert Whittaker got hurt in that fight too, and really showed a lot of guts. And I thought that would solidify him. Dana White told Brett Okamoto that he is going to, or Whittaker will be undergoing surgery soon. The new co-main event is now Lando Venata versus Marcos Rosa Moreno. Now, I love me some Lando Venata in the cage. The guy hasn't won in his last 4 fights. That should tell you the state of things right now. Just the absolute mess that they are in. The headline fight is Silva and Adesanya. And if you throw an interim title on that, which they probably should just do, fine. But you got Rana Yaya and Ricky Simone. Good fight, not pay-per-view quality to begin with. Nadia Kassem, 5-0 on your pay-per-view card against Montela De La Rosa. Jim Crute, 9-0, but he's on your pay-per-view card against Sam Alvey. Okay. All right, man. That's what you got. That's what you got. And when you don't stack these shows, I mean, you got to run at least 3 deep. 3 deep. Filthy. Filthy. Joseph Boza says, Sam Alvey making his debut on pay-per-view finally. Yeah, that's a weird one, man. The fact that he hasn't been on a pay-per-view. And then you look at things. Okay, well, when's the last time Anderson Silva headlined a pay-per-view? UFC 183 against Nick Diaz. So it's been since 2015. So it's been 4 years since Anderson Silva headlined a show on pay-per-view. Ironically, Kelvin Gastelum missed weight for that show. Almost got pulled when he fought Woodley. Man, UFC's running all these extra shows. We talked about how good the pacing was on last week's Fortaleza show. I don't know how that's going to look tonight. I'm not going to pretend that I know what the pacing's going to look like tonight. But I know that based on somebody who covers these events every single week, I know what the schedule looks like through June. And the schedule through June is brutal. Through June, as I looked at things, now keep in mind, I know a lot of you don't look at the pro wrestling end of things, but we cover pro wrestling. That's our bread and butter. That's what we get the most views and attention off of is pro wrestling. Every weekend through June has a UFC event except for WrestleMania weekend and Double or Nothing weekend, which is a new promotion. Woo, boy. A mess made of tonight's show, without a doubt. And on the horizon, you have UFC 235. Keep in mind, they get canceled last month's pay-per-view. It didn't happen. That's gone overlooked because UFC Brooklyn had a lot of buzz. UFC did very good in creating buzz. UFC 233 didn't happen. UFC 234 shouldn't be happening. I mean, the show will go on. They've got people in mere hours showing up for this event. But there are going to be probably thousands of people who show up to this event and have no idea that the main event is off. They will have no clue that their home country guy is off. Man, at least we always have Pitbull versus Scope, right? Speaking of, next weekend there's Ngannou versus Cain Velasquez. Ngannou and Velasquez headlining that. James Vick versus Paul Felder on that show. Calvillo versus Courtney Casey. We have interviews with both of those fighters. You have Miles Jury on that show. It's an okay show. Henan Barrow on the prelims against Luke Sanders. Decent show. Okay show. It's also during WWE Elimination Chamber, so we'll be covering that at length on Tuesday. I want to know what you guys think. You still ordering this show? Do you care? What do you think should happen to the title? Should they make Adesanya versus Silva an interim title fight? How will this all work out? I will be here right after UFC 234. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. People say, whoa, so no replacement or anything, huh? So here's the situation with that. Adesanya and Silva is what sold this pay-per-view by a lot of people. If you all want to, we post them all the time, but if you want to go over to UFC's YouTube, you can really see what has garnered attention. You can really see what people are looking to tune in and see. And you can do that by checking out the UFC countdowns. The Whittaker versus Gastelum UFC countdown clip has 398,000 views. Adesanya and Silva, no title, declining popularity. Adesanya never really headlined a big show. That has 1 million views. Now, I know a lot of you say, oh, YouTube metrics don't mean quite a lot. In my line of work, we use those, and WWE uses them. They're used to see who will go out of their way to see what personalities stand out to that degree. Unbelievable. We'll have more. FightfulMMA.com. Thank you, guys. Leave us a thumbs up over here. Subscribe. We're out.